Are the most talented players the greatest players per their sport? Do the most talented guys end up being the best players of all time? The GOATs? That's the question for today. And I'm going to kick it off right away and get right into it. I believe that's a false statement. I believe that the greatest players of all time are not the most talented players. I truly believe that. Couple examples. We're going to get right into this, guys. 3 sports: football, basketball, baseball. Football first. Who's the greatest of all time? I don't think anybody can argue that it's Tom Brady. He's got 7 Super Bowls. He's got more Super Bowls by himself than any other franchise has. And he's got all the stats. He's got all the rings. He's the greatest of all time in football. Michael Jordan in basketball. I think most people would agree Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time right now as we sit here today and talk about who is the best basketball player that ever lived. And the third one I have, we're going to use baseball. This one you could use a ton of different people, a ton of different names, but for this topic, I'm going to use Pete Rose for this one because he has the most hits of all time. And so I really challenge everyone to think about this. When we bring up these 3 guys, I feel very confident in saying that neither of those guys are the most talented in comparison to the rest of the pack. Let's look at Tom Brady real quick. He's a 6th-round draft pick. If you saw a picture of him on his NFL combine, he looked like he wasn't even an athlete. He looked like he didn't even play a college sport. Bad body, extremely slow, tested horribly in the combine, didn't have any of the skills that all the scouts are looking for today. Ends up winning 7 Super Bowls, playing for 20, 25 years or whatever it was, plays till he's 45, and ends up being the greatest football player of all time. Michael Jordan ends up getting cut from his varsity basketball team in high school. Right? If you're the best basketball player of all time, I think most people are going to have a hard time believing that you're going to get cut by your basketball coach in high school. So he goes through that adversity and does not let it define his career, ends up being who he was, right? 3-peating twice, doing it once, leaving the game in the prime of his career, going to play baseball, and then coming back and doing it again. Pete Rose, bad body, not fast, not strong, not a power hitter, but just absolutely feared by pitchers because the guy would do the things that you want any hitter to do. He'd grind out at bats, right? One of the toughest outs on the field. Just getting hit after hit, just absolutely doing it any means possible, any way possible. Not looking good, but finding a way to do it, finding a way to master his own craft. I think when you look at these 3 guys, they have mastered their own craft. They have mastered themselves as a player. Right? They didn't necessarily try to emulate somebody else. They knew what they were good at, they knew what their strengths were, and they mastered their craft. Right? Tom Brady, pocket passer. He was not doing the things that these quarterbacks are doing today. He was not mobile, he was not quick, he did not use his feet, which made it even harder because he was more one-dimensional compared to the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens now, who, if there's not an open receiver, then they can use their legs. And so, was he the most talented guy out there? No. And Michael Jordan as well. We gave the example of him getting cut from his basketball team, but just the stories of his work ethic, right? What he did to get to where he was. And the mental side of the game that he ended up, that was one of his main strengths. Just opponents feared playing him. His level of intensity could not be matched by anyone else he played against. Nobody else was going to outwork this guy. And teams and players feared him because of that. And so I bring up all of these examples because talent only takes you so far. Talent only has so much to do with it. And when we talk about talent and skills, they're two different things. Talent is what is God-given. Talent is what you start out with, right? Talent's that natural ability that you have. You're naturally fast or strong or have a good arm or whatever it is. But the skills are acquired. Skills are accumulated through your hard work, through the practice, through the reps that you put in and day out. So skills require time, and talent, in my opinion, is something that is more given without the time, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the work put into it. And so let's take it back from the top again. Are the most talented guys the most successful? Not always the case. So I want you guys to ask yourself this question. How many times are you using talent as an excuse? How many times are you using talent or your lack of talent as an excuse as to why you're not succeeding? Right? And is that an excuse that you're using to not work as hard? Right? Do you have these thoughts that it doesn't matter how much work you put into it, you'll never be able to succeed to the level of other people because they have more talent than you? You know, they were just given things more than you, more strength, more speed, more talent in whatever the sport is, whatever the position is. Are these excuses that we're making up right now to back off a little bit, to maybe not go all in on something that it is that we maybe desire, something that we're trying to achieve, right? You're trying to win a game, you're trying to win a tournament, you're trying to come out on top at the end of your season, you're trying to come out on top as an individual, having one of the best seasons you've ever had. Are you using the talent, the lack of talent that you think you may have, or the excess in talent that you may think your opponent has as an excuse? Because when we sit here and we think about the greatest of all time, the ones who have absolutely mastered their own craft over decades, do we really have that excuse to use? Is it really valid? Right? And I want you to really dig deep on that and think about what are we making up as an excuse today? Am I going to let talent get in my way? Am I going to let talent stop me from getting to where I want to go? And you've got to be able to ignore this. You've got to be able to eliminate the distraction that you think talent has over you. Think about that. Eliminate the distraction that you think talent has over you, over your mind. It cannot control you. It cannot be something that overwhelms you in the middle of the challenge, in the middle of the game. Because, again, it's a couple things. It's a distraction for one. It's a confidence killer for two. And it doesn't help you get to where you want to go. These GOATs that we're talking about, the greatest of all time, they want it more than anybody else wants it. And so your ability to want it is way more powerful than your talent. And if there's one sentence to sum up this whole episode, it would probably be that. How bad you want it is way more powerful than how much talent you have. Over time, especially over time. Because if you really want something bad, over time, you're going to get it if you're chasing it. Right? And if you really want something bad, you're going to acquire the skills needed over time to achieve it. Your talent is not going to help you over time. Talent's one of those things that actually helps you more in the beginning and less in the end. Because the longer and longer you play, the more everyone's at an even playing field or a closer playing field to where it's not a huge drastic difference in talent. Now everyone's pretty good. Right? The longer you play, now everyone's pretty good. And so it's got to be something else than talent that separates your game from the rest. That's what the Pete Roses of the world have. That's what the Michael Jordans of the world have, the Tom Bradys. The consistency of them grinding day in, day out to get to where they want to go. The realization that the road is not a straight path. They're going to have to zig and zag, and there's going to be an up and a down, and there's going to be turns left and right to get to where they want to go, to acquire the skills needed, to grind, to put in the work, to ignore talent, to not let talent be an excuse, to realize talent is just a starting point. Talent is just a starting point, and from there, it's the skills and the work and the commitment required that's really going to be able to carry you to let your ship sail to where it needs to go to get to that final destination. And so again, guys, are we using talent as an excuse? Do we put too much value into talent? Do we put too much value into talent? And again, the 3 guys I just gave you, that's just the facts. That's the reality of what we're looking at. If we really dig deep and think about this, and it's not even, I promise you, it's not a reach here with what I'm saying. And we're talking about these guys. I mean, look at it. It's undeniable the obstacles that they had to overcome to get to where they wanted to be or had to be. Do you guys know how hard it would be for a 6th round draft pick as a quarterback to move up the ranks to then become a starter, a long-term starter, and have the career that he had? If you go back and look at his college career even, he wasn't the everyday starter in college. And so he went through those battles and those challenges. Pete Rose. You can Google the scouting reports on him when he was coming up. And I haven't even done it. You can go do it, but I can tell you this. He wasn't at the top of the list. He wasn't the top prospect always. He wasn't that number 1 projected guy. Again, it was not real fast, bad body, slow, bad arm, like nothing spectacular whatsoever with his talent in any area. But his will to win, his mental side, his ability to just battle and battle and battle and not give up and just be a nightmare like for an opponent, a nightmare for a pitcher. I'll tell you a quick story about Pete Rose. So when I played for the Arizona Diamondbacks in the minor leagues, my outfield and base running coach was Joel Youngblood. Played in the major leagues for a long time. He played with Pete Rose on the same team. And he would tell stories about Pete yelling at his teammates and other teammates when they wouldn't sprint to first base, when they wouldn't hustle. Ground ball in the infield. Guys dogging it. He was yelling at the guy to respect the game, whether he was on his team or not. And I believe I'm remembering this story correctly. But Joel would tell us this story about the respect for the game on all levels, regardless of what team you were on, that Pete had. Just the respect for the game, the amount of hustle that was required to respect the game. Or the amount of hard work and effort put in on every single minute of the game. Every minute of the game, not one wasted. Not one gone by without giving 100% effort and 100% back to the game. Setting the example for the way the game should be played for the ones who come behind you. Huge. None of us are thinking about this when we're playing. It's so true, though. And when you're playing a game, your younger siblings or the other younger kids watching you guys play, whatever you do, good or bad, they're going to start to emulate. They're going to start to do that in their game as well because that's what they see. Right? What we see the major leaguers do, good or bad, we start to pick up on and do ourselves because we are looking up to those players regardless. We want to be those guys. We want to be where they're at the stage and the level that they're playing at. That's everyone's dream. And so, another good Ed Milet quote, most things are caught, not taught. Most things are caught, not taught. And so we're catching the things that we see, the actions that we see, more than the things that we are hearing. that are being taught. And so I'll leave it with that. And remember the tips that we're talking about with talent. Remember the perspective here. Do not put too much value on talent, and do not let it be an excuse.